The jump completed without ceremony. One moment the stars stretched into pale lines, the next they snapped back into cold points of light. 9 human ships drifted into real space, their hulls matte and unadorned, their silhouettes compact and quiet. No banners. No weapon flares. Just geometry against the dark. Commander Elias Ward watched the sensor feed stabilize. Outer Perseus expanse. The gate was intact. No traffic. No signals. Confirm position, he said. Confirmed, navigation replied. Exactly where the charts said we'd be. Ward allowed himself a breath. 40 years in interstellar politics had taught humanity one lesson above all others: empty space never stayed empty for long. The alert chimed before the thought finished. Multiple mass signatures. Thousands. The display bloomed red. Ships unfolded from hyperspace in layered formation, their arrivals staggered with ritual precision. Hulls kilometers long, surfaces etched with luminous imperial script. Weapon arrays rotated into ceremonial alignment. Carrier arcs locked into place like a closing jaw. The Varelian Galactic Empire had arrived. Ward folded his hands behind his back. So, he murmured, right on time. Across the fleet, no one panicked. No alarms screamed. Conversations continued at normal volume. A few officers exchanged knowing glances. On the Imperial flagship, High Executor Zalthoran surveyed the scene from a raised dais of polished obsidian. The human ships were disappointing. Small. Bare. No obvious armaments. No escorts. Classification, he demanded. Atypical, his tactical aide replied. Low energy signatures. Minimal redundancy. Likely civilian or exploratory. Zalthoran's mandibles flexed in mild amusement. Then this will be brief. He stepped forward as the comm channel opened, his image towering across the human bridge displays. Tall, angular, wrapped in the regalia of conquest. His voice carried the resonance of authority practiced over centuries. Unidentified vessels, he intoned. You have entered sovereign territory of the Varelian Galactic Empire without sanction. By decree of the throne, you will cease all movement and prepare for inspection. Ward studied the projection with polite interest. He likes to hear himself talk. Someone muttered nearby. Zalthoran continued unfazed. Your species has been noted for accelerated expansion and irregular behavior. Such patterns invite correction. Ward leaned slightly toward the comm officer. Open channel. Full audio. Channel open. Ward didn't rush his reply. Silence stretched just long enough to register. This is Commander Elias Ward, he said evenly. Terran Deep Space Defense Coalition. We're conducting a lawful transit. The executor's eyes narrowed. Your law is irrelevant here. Noted. A flicker of irritation crossed the imperial face. You will surrender your vessels, transmit all navigational data, and dismantle any settlements established beyond your core systems. Compliance will grant your species continued existence under imperial oversight. On the bridge, someone coughed to hide a laugh. Ward raised a finger, suppressing it. I'm afraid that won't be possible. Zalthoran straightened, his presence sharpening. You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. I understand perfectly, Ward replied. We simply disagree. For the first time, uncertainty rippled through the Imperial command deck. Disagreement was not part of the expected script. Zalthoran's tone hardened. Then you are either ignorant or suicidal. Ward glanced at the tactical overlay, at the disparity so extreme it bordered on parity. 9 ships against thousands. Any other species would already be begging. Behind him, a junior officer whispered, Permission to record this? Ward nodded. Archive it. He returned his attention to the channel. High Executor, we have no hostile intent. We recommend you stand down. The executor stared, then released a sound his translators struggled to soften. A contemptuous hiss. You advise the Empire? Zalthoran said. From those craft? The word craft dripped with disdain. Ward smiled, though the camera barely caught it. "We advise everyone." Zalthorin cut the channel without ceremony. On the Imperial flagship, he turned to his aides. "They mock us." "Possibly a fear response," one suggested. "Primitive species often mask panic with bravado." "Then enlighten them." The order rippled outward. Weapon arrays glowed. Targeting solutions locked onto the human convoy with effortless speed. Back on the human bridge, the tactical officer reported. "They're charging. Pattern suggests a limited strike." "Warning shot," Ward agreed. "He wants submission." "Recommendations?" Ward considered for a moment. "Hold position." No evasive maneuvers were plotted. No countermeasures primed. The first volley launched in disciplined sequence. Energy lances and kinetic projectiles crossed the void in perfect geometry, a demonstration as much as an attack. Several officers watched in silence. One leaned back in their chair. "Anyone else feel like this is overkill?" they asked. Ward didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the incoming fire, his expression unreadable. On the Imperial command deck, Zalthorin observed with satisfaction. The display would terrify them. The near miss would break their resolve. It always did. The distance closed. Then the weapons vanished. Not detonated. Not deflected. Simply gone. Energy signatures collapsed into static. Projectiles dissolved into particulate haze, as if space itself had lost interest in them. Silence followed. Imperial sensors screamed inconsistencies. Target locks failed. Data streams contradicted each other. Zalthorin's satisfaction evaporated. "Report. Weapons did not impact," an aide stammered. "No explosions detected. No debris." "That is impossible." Across the void, the human ship still hadn't moved. On Ward's bridge, a few people chuckled openly now. "Translate that?" someone asked. Ward tilted his head. "Not yet." He tapped the console, reopening the channel. The executor's image reappeared, rigid with restrained fury. "Explain," Zalthorin demanded. Ward met his gaze without flinching. "We did say we weren't interested in fighting." The executor leaned closer to the camera, mandibles trembling. "You will answer for this." Ward's voice remained calm. "High Executor, that was a warning." "Yours." A beat passed. Another. Zalthorin straightened, decision crystallizing behind his eyes. "All fleets," he commanded, "prepare for full engagement." On the human bridge, the tactical display shifted as thousands of Imperial ships moved in unison. Ward exhaled slowly. "All right," he said. "They've chosen." He looked around the bridge, meeting each gaze in turn. "No fear. Just focus. Phase 1. He ordered quietly. Outside, space began to behave in ways the Empire had never learned to recognize. The Imperial fleet moved as one. Thousands of vessels slid into attack formation, their vast silhouettes eclipsing stars, their engines humming with disciplined aggression. Weapon arrays synchronized, power levels climbing across the armada in cascading waves. To the Varelians, this was order made visible. This was how fear was manufactured. On the human flagship, the bridge lighting remained unchanged. "Formation complete," Tactical reported. "They're confident." Ward studied the pattern. "They always are." Across the void, energy signatures spiked. Space trembled as the first coordinated barrage launched, not a warning this time, but annihilation. Lances of coherent plasma, kinetic rods accelerated to relativistic speeds, gravitic shear fields layered for redundancy. Enough firepower to sterilize a system. "Incoming," navigation said, unnecessarily. Ward didn't raise his voice. "Maintain position." A few officers exchanged glances. Not doubt, anticipation. The barrage closed the distance. At precisely the calculated threshold, the fabric of space around the human ships shifted. Not violently. Not visibly at first. The stars behind them bent, their light stretching into subtle arcs. Imperial targeting feeds began to desynchronize, each system insisting on a different reality. Weapons lost cohesion. Gravitic fields folded inward. Plasma dispersed into harmless radiance. From the Empire's perspective, the attack dissolved into nonsense. Targets are misaligned, an Imperial officer reported, confusion bleeding into his voice. Multiple false returns. Salthorin slammed a clawed hand onto the command rail. Reacquire. We cannot. The space between us and them is unstable. Then fire again. Another volley launched. It fared no better. Projectiles curved away, dragged off course by invisible gradients. Some simply vanished, swallowed by folds that hadn't existed moments before. On the human bridge, Tactical monitored calmly. Phase 1 containment holding. No breaches. Ward nodded. Good. Keep it narrow. What if they escalate further? Someone asked. They will, Ward replied. They don't know how not to. As if summoned by the statement, the Imperial fleet surged forward. Carriers deployed swarms. Dreadnoughts advanced, their sheer mass intended to overwhelm any anomaly through force alone. Salthorin leaned toward his sensor chief. Explain this. The chief hesitated. Their ships are not projecting shields, High Executor. There is no barrier to penetrate. Then what resists us? The answer arrived too late to be useful. Human vessels began to move. Not with acceleration. With repositioning. One moment they occupied a point in space, the next they occupied another, gliding along paths no thrust vector could explain. They didn't dodge incoming fire, they were simply no longer where the fire expected them to be. Imperial formations broke as targeting logic failed. Ships adjusted, collided, scattered. Commands overlapped. The perfection of the Armada unraveled into chaos. On Ward's bridge, navigation spoke with quiet satisfaction. They're correcting for physics that no longer apply. Let them, Ward said. They'll exhaust themselves. A private channel blinked to life. Salthorin's image reappeared, no longer composed. What trickery is this? He demanded. Ward met his gaze. It's not a trick. It's preparation. You claim superiority while hiding behind illusions. Ward shook his head. We're not hiding. We're standing exactly where we said we would. The executor's eyes flicked to a secondary display. One of his cruisers had gone dark, drifting, systems offline but hull intact. What have you done to my ships? Nothing permanent, Ward replied. Your power grids are overwhelmed. Your command relays are desynchronized. You'll recover. That is an act of war. You declared one, Ward said evenly. We declined to die quietly. Salthorin cut the channel, his fury now naked. All units, he roared, advance and engage at point-blank range. The order rippled outward. The Imperial fleet pressed in, abandoning formation discipline in favor of proximity. If distance failed, mass would not. Ward watched the convergence, calculating. They're trying to smother us. Can they? Tactical asked. Ward considered the question. They can try. Human ships shifted again. Space around them thickened, distances stretching unpredictably. Imperial vessels found themselves closer to one human ship and impossibly far from another, their relative positions rewritten without warning. One by one, Imperial ships lost power. Not explosively. Quietly. Lights dimmed. Engines fell silent. Crews found themselves alive, unharmed, and suddenly irrelevant. On the Imperial flagship, alarms layered over one another. Salthorin stared at the tactical display as red icons flickered to gray. Report! He demanded. Multiple vessels disabled. An aide said, voice tight. No casualties. Systems simply shut down. How? We don't know. The executor's gaze returned to the human convoy. 9 ships. Still 9. Still intact. A realization crept in, unwelcome and corrosive. They are not fighting us, he said slowly. They are controlling us. On Ward's bridge, a junior officer leaned closer. They're starting to see it. Ward nodded. That's the dangerous part. Why? Because now they're afraid. As if on cue, the Imperial flagship lurched. Its forward momentum halted, arrested by a field it could neither detect nor counter. The surrounding space crystallized into a containment shell, isolating it from the rest of the fleet. Zalthorin staggered, catching himself. What is happening? We're limiting variables, Ward said, his voice calm as he reopened the channel. Too many ships complicate communication. You dare isolate me? We prefer clarity. The executor's mandibles tightened. Release my fleet. Ward shook his head. Stand down, and we will. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Zalthorin finally spoke, his tone altered. You came here expecting this. Yes, Ward said. Long before we ever left our system. You baited us. No, Ward corrected. We allowed you to be yourselves. The executor stared, centuries of doctrine cracking under the weight of the moment. What are you? Ward didn't answer immediately. Outside, the Imperial fleet hung powerless, thousands of ships reduced to inert monuments. We're human, he said at last. And we've had a long time to learn what empires do. Zalthorin drew a sharp breath. Then this is not a battle. Ward's eyes were steady. No, he agreed. It's a lesson. The containment field tightened imperceptibly, and the stars beyond the Imperial flagship warped into unfamiliar shapes as the truth settled in, unavoidable and absolute. The silence frightened them more than the weapons ever had. Across the outer Perseus expanse, thousands of Imperial ships drifted without power, their once perfect formations frozen into broken constellations. Engines were silent. Weapons cold. Crews waited in disciplined confusion, alive and untouched, yet utterly irrelevant. High Executor Zalthorin stood alone at the center of his command deck. The containment field around his flagship shimmered faintly, not as a barrier but as a fact, present, absolute, unquestioned. Every system report confirmed the same truth. Nothing responded. Status, he demanded, though his voice lacked its former certainty. The sensor officer swallowed. We are isolated. No propulsion response. No external communication beyond the human channel. Internal systems nominal. So they have not crippled us, Zalthorin said slowly. They have paused us. Yes, High Executor. That distinction cut deeper than destruction. The human channel opened without request. Commander Ward appeared, posture relaxed, hands folded behind his back as though this were a routine inspection. You're efficient, Zalthorin said. I will grant you that. Ward inclined his head slightly. We value efficiency. You could have annihilated us, the executor continued. Your capabilities suggest it. We could, Ward agreed. We chose not to. Zalthorin studied the human carefully now, no longer dismissive, no longer certain. Why? Ward glanced briefly at a side display, watching the inert Imperial fleet. Because annihilation teaches nothing. Survival does. The executor's mandibles twitched. You speak as if this outcome was inevitable. In a way, Ward replied. It was. Explain. Ward didn't rush. For most species, first contact is discovery. For us, it was confirmation. Zalthorin's eyes narrowed. Confirmation of what? That empires behave predictably. The executor scoffed, though the sound lacked conviction. You claim insight into civilizations thousands of years older than your own. Ward met his gaze. We studied you before we ever met you. How? From a distance. From ruins. From the echoes you leave behind. Zalthorin's voice hardened. You had no presence beyond your system. No, Ward said. But we had curiosity. And patience. On the human flagship, Tactical spoke quietly. Containment stable. No escalation indicators. Ward nodded without breaking eye contact. Zalthorin paced, the controlled fury of a ruler denied his tools. You watched us conquer. You watched us erase others. And you still came. Yes. Why? Ward's expression softened, just slightly. Because we needed to know if you would stop. The words landed heavier than any weapon. Zalthorin halted. And your verdict? Ward didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured, and the display between them shifted. Imperial data feeds, live, unfiltered, played across the executor's vision. His own fleet. His own commands. The precise moment fear gave way to aggression. You never do, Ward said quietly. The executor recoiled. You violated our systems. We observed them, Ward corrected. There's a difference. You mapped our fleet, Zalthorin accused. Our weapons. Our tactics. Ward nodded. Centuries ago. That's impossible. From your perspective, Ward said. Not from ours. Zalthorin's voice dropped. Then tell me, human, what are your ships? Ward exhaled, as though choosing his words with care. They're not warships. The executor laughed sharply. Do not insult me. They're platforms, Ward continued unfazed. Interfaces. They don't project force, they manage environments. You control space itself, Zalthorin said. We learned to negotiate with it, Ward replied. You learned to dominate what you could see. The containment field pulsed faintly, emphasizing the point. Zalthorin's gaze drifted to the stars beyond the viewport, distorted by forces he could neither sense nor measure. You built this to fight us. Ward shook his head. We built it to survive you. A long silence followed. On the Imperial deck, an aide hesitantly approached. High Executor, fleet morale is deteriorating. Crews report fear. Zalthorin dismissed him with a gesture, eyes never leaving the human. You wanted us afraid. No, Ward said. We wanted you listening. And if we refuse? Ward's voice remained calm. Then this standoff continues. Your ships remain disabled. Your expansion halts here. For how long? As long as necessary. Zalthorin's mandibles flexed. You think you can contain an empire? Ward's eyes were steady. We already are. The executor's composure finally cracked. You are playing at mercy. No, Ward said. We're practicing restraint. Why spare us? Ward's reply was immediate. Because someone once spared us. Zalthorin blinked. Explain. Ward looked away for the first time, his gaze distant. Humanity almost didn't make it off its cradle. We learned early that survival doesn't come from strength alone. It comes from remembering what nearly ended you. The executor absorbed that, the weight of it settling slowly. So this is your doctrine. It's our warning, Ward corrected. We don't need your territory. We don't want your throne. We want you to understand what happens when you cross us. And if we learn nothing? Ward met his eyes again. Then next time, we won't stop at containment. Zalthorin felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Not anger. Not fear alone. Realization. You never intended to conquer, he said softly. No. You intended to be left alone. Yes. The executor straightened, centuries of arrogance stripped bare. And if the Empire accepts this lesson? Ward's expression eased. Then today becomes a footnote. A moment when escalation stopped. And if we do not? Ward didn't threaten. He didn't need to. Then today becomes the last time you underestimate us. Outside the containment field, the Imperial fleet drifted in silent witness. Thousands of warships, undefeated for millennia, rendered harmless without a single life lost. Zalthorin looked at them, then back at the human commander. You laughed when we arrived. Ward allowed himself a faint smile. Because we've seen this before. Where? In our own history, Ward said. Every empire thinks it's the end of the story. The executor closed his eyes, the truth settling inescapably. And humanity? Ward's voice was steady, resolute. We're what comes after. The channel closed. Zalthorin stood alone, surrounded by a fleet that could no longer protect him, facing a future that no longer obeyed his certainties. The decision did not come with ceremony. High Executor Zalthorin stood motionless as the final reports arrived, each one confirming what he already knew. His fleet remained intact yet useless. Thousands of crews waited for orders he could no longer enforce through power alone. The Empire had reached a boundary it could not burn through. He opened the channel. Commander Ward appeared at once, as if he had been waiting for the moment. His posture was unchanged, calm to the point of disarming. "You've reached a conclusion," Ward said. Zalthorin did not bristle at the assumption. "Yes." "Then speak." The executor straightened, centuries of imperial authority compressing into a single controlled breath. "The Virelian Empire will stand down in this sector. Hostilities will cease immediately." On the human bridge, no cheers followed. No one moved. Ward nodded once. "Understood." Zalthorin's mandibles tightened. "You expected resistance." "We expected deliberation," Ward replied. "You've chosen pragmatism. I have chosen survival," Zalthorin said. "Do not mistake that for surrender." Ward met his gaze. "We don't." The executor hesitated, then continued. "You will release my fleet." "Gradually," Ward said. "Once disengagement protocols are confirmed." "You still don't trust us." Ward's expression remained neutral. "Trust is built. Fear is immediate." Zalthorin absorbed the statement without protest. "Your terms." "They're simple," Ward replied. "Recognize human sovereignty. Withdraw all imperial claims within this region. No tribute. No oversight." The executor stared. "You want nothing." "We want space," Ward said. "And quiet. That alone is worth humiliating an empire?" Ward's answer came without hesitation. "Yes." Silence stretched again, but this time it was different. Not tense. Final. Zalthorin inclined his head, the smallest possible acknowledgement that still carried weight. "The Empire agrees." Ward turned slightly, signaling his crew. "Begin release sequence." Across the void, the invisible constraints loosened. Imperial ships flickered back to life one by one. Engines hummed. Systems stabilized. Crews exhaled in relief as control returned. From the Imperial flagship's viewport, Zalthorin watched his armada reawaken. Not victorious. Not broken. Changed. "You could have ended us," he said quietly. Ward didn't deny it. "Ending you would have been easy. Then why stop here?" Ward looked out at the stars, his reflection faint against the glass. "Because someone will come after you. Another empire. Another doctrine. If we become what we stop today, nothing improves." Zalthorin studied him. "You believe restraint makes you different. It makes us careful," Ward said. "Difference comes from what we remember." "And what do you remember?" Ward's voice softened. "What it's like to be small. To be threatened. To survive anyway." The executor considered that. "Your species is dangerous." Ward smiled faintly. "We know." The channel fell silent as disengagement continued. Imperial ships began their withdrawal, formations looser now, ceremonial precision replaced by something closer to caution. On the human bridge, a junior officer finally spoke. "They're leaving." Ward nodded. "Yes." "No pursuit?" "No." "Even now?" "Especially now," Ward said. "This ends cleanly." As the last Imperial vessel slipped into hyperspace, the expanse grew quiet again. 9 human ships remained, unscathed, uncelebrated. Ward remained at the viewport long after the tactical displays dimmed. "You all did well," he said at last. "Stand down from Phase 1. A pause. "Commander," Tactical said carefully, "galactic channels are already lighting up." "They saw everything." Ward smiled slightly. "They were meant to." "What if this makes us a target?" Ward turned. "It already has." The crew waited for more. "What changes now," he continued, "is the assumptions. The fleet reoriented, engines warming for departure. No banners unfurled. No declarations followed. On the Imperial flagship, Zalthorin watched the human ships align for jump. Small. Silent. Unassuming. They laughed. He murmured. An aide nodded. Yes, High Executor. Zalthorin's gaze hardened with the truth he would carry back to the throne. Because they knew how this would end. The human fleet vanished into folded space without spectacle. On Ward's bridge, the stars stretched, then snapped back into familiar order. Homebound vectors filled the displays. Ward allowed himself a moment alone before leaving the viewport. Humanity had not claimed territory. It had not demanded tribute. It had not raised its voice. And yet the galaxy would remember. Not the weapons. Not the ships. The choice. As the jump completed, Ward spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. They thought this was our first war. The stars burned on, indifferent, while somewhere far behind them, an empire reconsidered everything it thought it knew about power, and about the species that had laughed when faced with extinction.